Okay, well, happy Friday, and thanks for meeting with me for all of your group project proposal meetings, and a lot of groups had picked out some interesting data sets. I might have encouraged some groups to kind of either tighten or refine their question, or make some suggestions there. But yeah, I look forward to see what you guys come up with. I wanted to do a little bit of exploratory analysis with one of the data sets, and I think it could be kind of fun or kind of interesting to kind of look at some of these different data sets together and present some of the things that your classmates and their groups are doing. And so this data set that I'm working with is one of the groups is working with titles in the Netflix that are offered on Netflix. And so here is this data set comes from Kaggle, and it says the data set was created to list all shows available on Netflix streaming in the U.S. in July 2022. Okay, and it says it contains a little over 5,000 unique titles on Netflix. All right, and it has all of this information. Okay, and then they gathered some information based on from IMDb and TMDB and different things, and there's ones from other sites or other streaming places, and then this is the author's GitHub repository. And this data file contains two CSV things, one that contains credits about the actors, and then one about the titles. And so here I'm going to just take a look at the titles. And so it says, there's 5,850 observations, and it looks something kind of like this. All right, it's got the title of the production, okay, and it says whether it's a show. There's a text description, and then when this show or movie was released, the rating, R, PG, things like that. It's runtime, the genres. Drama, crime, documentary. They call it documentation, which is a little, it's not, I would say it's a documentary. The production companies, and just some of this other information here. Okay, and so there's a lot of stuff here, and you can kind of scroll down, and maybe there'll be some titles that I don't know, that we might recognize. Okay, Yu-Gi-Oh. I guess 22 minutes, and there are 7 seasons. I don't know if we might have to scroll down quite a bit to get to something a little bit more modern. Okay, so there's a bunch of whatever these. Actually, I don't recognize a lot of these things. Okay, but lots of titles. For movies and shows, and then are they dramas or comedies or things like that, reality TV shows and stuff like that. Okay. All right. So one thing, just kind of exploring some of your variables. Okay, is I thought maybe we'll just take a look at release year and look at maybe the distribution of when were these things made, right? So here, all I'm going to do is I'm going to just take release year, and I'm going to just make a bar plot, okay, based on release year, or I guess we could do a histogram as well, but in this case, it's fine here. So here I start off with a histogram. I'm going to do release year on histogram, and then in here I'm going to color, outline it in black. Fill color will be light blue, and this is what our resulting plot looks like. Okay, let's zoom in here. Okay. All right. So what do we see? So again, as you do exploratory analysis, you'll create some plots, and then you'll look at that and you'll say, all right, is there anything unusual or interesting that we see here? Okay. And so there's not just kind of the overall trends, but I would say also look up anything, any kind of points that stand out, right? So what we see is that the vast majority of titles in the Netflix catalog come from after 2010, okay? And then before 2010, 2000s, 1980s, 1990s, there's some, very few, and then there's very, very, very little before pre-1980. Okay, but that's that. Okay, so it'd be. I was curious about like, do we have any shows prior to say 1980 or whatever? If we look at what are movies, what are shows? Because I feel like, I don't know, just from personal experience, when I go on Netflix, I feel like it's mostly shows. I feel like I go on Netflix to mostly watch shows, but maybe there's more movies or whatnot. And so here I'm going to split. I want to create a plot for shows versus, movies. Okay. And so I could do a geom histogram here in order to kind of to have to do position equals dodge and have them side by side. It has to be geom bar. I could do geom histogram here, but here I'm gonna split it using facet grid. Okay, and then so for facet grid, you can either split vertically or split horizontally. So here, I'm gonna say, all right, we're gonna look at release year, and then we're gonna do geom bar, which is gonna count how many values exist for a particular release year, and then I'm going to facet grid it rows, right? And so here, let's hide this. Okay, and so this is the plot that we see for movies versus shows here, and we can see, oh, you know what? Looking at the vertical scale, we have more movies than shows. Okay, so in 2010 is like our peak. We have around 300 shows, and then over here for movies, we have around 500, a little over 500 movies, 500 movies in 2020. And then we can also see, especially as we go back in time, very, very few shows. Okay, there's a show, there's like a little speck right here and a speck right here, and there's a speck right here. Okay. Not that. Okay, so this is when you do facet grid rows, and then similar thing when you do facet grid columns. Instead, you get the plot side by side. Okay, so same information, just slightly different visual presentation, and depending on what it is you want to emphasize, sometimes the having it presented vertically, the different facets, or presented horizontally will emphasize different things. When you present it horizontally, what becomes very clear is that this is shorter than this. Okay, I mean it's also clear the other plot, right? So, but I would say this one you might see a little bit more of the difference between stuff appearing here and like hardly anything appearing over here, and then over here I would say perhaps the difference is drawn to this is shorter and this is taller over here. I don't know. Again, it's the same information and it's just presented in slightly different ways. And what are your eyes drawn to is a tiny bit different. Okay, and so anyway, as you're working on your final project, do this exploratory data analysis, and then you'll create plots. You're in your final report, I would say include a lot of the plots, not every single one, right? Not every single plot's going to be a winner. Okay, so include ones that you feel like present relevant information. But you'll have to make a decision. You don't want to present this plot and this plot at the same time because they're presenting the same thing. So you want to make make a decision about what plot you think conveys best what it is you're trying to show. Okay, here rather than doing a facet grid, I have one plot, and I'm going to show everything together, and I'm going to use position equals dodge here. Okay, so I think I showed position equal dodge, and that's going to create the bar plots side by side. Okay, and so we could see for the movies which appear in red and shows which appear in blue, or pink and blue, the colors appear quite a bit different. So, well, anyway, this is what we kind of see here, and yeah, we see there is a difference, and we see consistently more movies than shows over time, right? And that difference is, throughout all of the years. Okay, again, same information, different ways to convey it. Here, I thought, well, maybe, I'm just curious, as I look at these plots, I just became curious about, are there, over here, like prior to 1980, are there any shows? And I see like a couple specks of blue, okay? But it seems like it's almost, there aren't very many titles to begin with. And of the titles that do appear, they seem like they're almost all movies. And so I just said, are there any shows prior to, say, like 1990? And so here I just wanted to look at the actual rows and pieces of information. And I encourage this also. Anytime you create plots, and you're going to notice outliers. Okay, you're going to notice like, okay, there's a few kind of things, or in this thing, most of the dots follow a certain kind of pattern, and are there outliers? Okay, and then and I think it's worthwhile, or I strongly encourage, okay, that you look into the outliers themselves and see, like, is there anything here that just seems a little bit kind of unusual here? So here I'm going to just say, all right, let's filter to the shows. Let's look at everything coming before 1990, and then I just want to see the titles of these things, all right? Maybe the release year and the genres, and we're going to arrange by release year. Okay, and so what we see is 5 Came Back, the reference films, Monty Python's Flying Circus, Monty Python's, I think this is Flying Circus, but in German, okay, or something, okay. Danger Mouse, Knight Rider, Wheel of Fortune, some of these things. So some of these are like, Wheel of Fortune's like this long-running game show. I guess it's been running since 1983, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, okay. Seinfeld apparently first came on in 1989, and so this is what we have, and we go, okay, all right. So there's only 12 kind of titles that we have here. I was curious what this 5 Came Back was, right? So release year 1945 is by far the earliest kind of show that appears. There's a huge gap between 1945 and 1969. I'm thinking like, what are old shows? And I'm thinking like, Leave It to Beaver. I don't even know, right? I have no idea what shows exist a long time ago. The Andy Griffith Show, I don't know. Or what, I Love Lucy? I have no idea, right? And I'm like, okay, there was like no TV, right? There was no TV prior to, when was the TV invented? So I was just wondering, like, how can you have a show in 1945 prior to like television being widely available, or even being recorded or something? So I was curious what this was, and so I looked this up. 5 Came Back, the reference films, okay, and it's hard to okay. So what I found was, okay, there is a TV series called the Five Came Back, but it was produced in 2017. Okay, original release 2017, and it's a documentary. So there's a documentary called Five Came Back. It's a documentary TV series, and it's about film directors who fought in World War II and then came back and made movies about World War II, kind of as like propaganda pieces to kind of encourage American citizens to, participate, or I guess to drum up support for the war effort and things like that. And so it's a show about these movies that were produced, and Netflix also carries the actual movies themselves that they're kind of referring to. And I guess they decided to classify it as a show. All right, so it's an interesting choice. But yeah, I was just wondering, like, how can you have a show in 1945 before really, like, I don't know what history of TV, right? When was the TV invented? Was the television invented? Okay, 1927, but I don't even know. Like, what was the first TV show? The Queen's Messenger? Okay, all right, I guess U.S. drama and one. Okay, so anyway, I don't know, right? But I was just kind of wondering, like, all of my ideas of like what American history looks like on TV is like 1945 was prior to that, right? So hopefully you have a little bit of domain knowledge of whatever you're looking at, and if there's something that stands out, something that seems like a little bit of an odd thing, look into it. Okay, that's going to be important. If during the final project, as I'm reading through your report, if I notice certain outliers, I might ask questions about it, and I hope you would have answers for that. So one thing I wanted to look at is, there's a bunch of different things you could ask, but I was just curious about these genres, okay? Because one thing I noticed was that in these genres, there are multiple things listed, right? We have documentary, drama, crime. This is probably could have been classified as documentary, war, but I'm not the one who created this data, so we're just going to have to assume this data was kind of is accurate. But you see things like there's comedy, documentary, romance, comedy, your rom-com, drama, crime, comedy, drama, comedy, crime, romance, action, right? So you have a bunch of these genres. And so I was just curious, like, first of all, like, how many of each genre appears, okay? When the data that appears here, this is just text, okay? This is just text information, and it's a little bit, you just see character, okay? It's a little bit difficult to work with because you got multiple values here, and it's not actually being treated as like as a vector or anything like that. It's just it's text that contains multiple words here. And so what I want to do is I want to create a new column that says, like, okay, this title has comedy listed as one of its dramas. This title has family listed as one of its genres. And so to do this, I'm going to use a function called string detect. Okay, I showed usage of string detect when we were talking about the Las Vegas hotel database, and we were looking for the word casino. Here we're going to do something similar, and we're going to just look for certain words in the genre. And so string detect, you put in basically what column you want to search for, and then what word you're searching for. So here I want to search for the word comedy. So I put comedy in quotes because that's the word that I'm searching for. And we're going to search the column genre. And if it does detect that word comedy in here, it's going to return true for that row. Okay? And if it does not detect comedy, okay, in that row, it's going to return false. Okay? And so we're going to do mutate, and we're going to create a column for is comedy. I'm going to do the same thing for drama, animation, family, action. I think there's even more genres than this, but I just decided to start off with these 10. Okay, so we're gonna say, all right, does it contain drama? Does it contain animation? Does it contain family, action, horror, sci-fi, crime, film, documentation, or whatever? And I'm gonna create these new columns that will contain true if it contains that text, or false if it does not. Okay. This can be expanded to use what's called regular expressions, which are really powerful and great things that can be matched not for just exact words, but if for whatever reason comedy is sometimes capitalized or sometimes lowercase or something like that, you can write a thing to accommodate for different what we call patterns. It's a little bit beyond the scope of this course, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about regular expressions. But if you are working on something and there's text in your field and you need some help with it, come to office hours. I'm happy to help you write the necessary regular expression to pull off the task that you want. Okay, so here I'm going to take titles, mutate and add all of these columns, and then we're going to store that back into titles. So right now titles has 15 variables, and I'm going to add basically 10 more columns. So what we should see is after I run this, we should see like 25 variables. Okay, and so anytime you do an operation, pay attention to what's happening in your environment and see if that happens. Indeed, now titles now has 25 variables, and we'll just take a look. And so we got 5 came back, which this first thing is documentation, and we scroll to the right and we see, is comedy false, is drama false, animation false, family false, all of these things. Is document will be true. Okay, over here we have Taxi Driver, which is a drama crime genres, and then what we see is basically false for everything but true for drama, and I guess I didn't include is crime in there, but we see true for drama and things like that. Okay. Here I'm piping it into Vue to just do exactly what I did. All right, so what I want to do is I want to just I want to go through this thing, and I just want to get sums, like how many of these titles. We have a total of 5,850. How many are comedies? How many are dramas? How many are animation? Okay, and so what I can do is I can go through and I can sum. Okay, I can sum the column. When you ask R to add up or sum a column that contains falses and trues, what it's going to do is it treats the trues as 1 and the false as 0. So basically, it's going to tell you how many true values do you have in this column. Okay, you can also kind of just check yourself, and so you can kind of do filter comedy true, and it says 2,325 entries. So what we would expect is we expect there to be 2,325 comedy. Okay, and if I filter drama to true, I have 2,968. So that's what we want to see. And so here I'm going to do titles. I'm going to say summarize, and I'm going to do comedy count. Sum is comedy. Drama count. Sum is drama. All right, and so we're going to run that. And indeed, I get 2,325 comedies, which matches what I saw when I did the filter. I'm going to get 2,968 dramas, which matches what I saw when we did the filter, right? And those are probably our two biggest genres as far as, movies and theater and things like that, right? That's your classic, right? You got the smiling mask and the sad mask for drama versus comedy type of thing. Okay, now there are 10 of these columns, right? I've got is comedy, is drama, is animation, is family, is action, things like that. And so I could just go through and I could do some is comedy, some is drama, some is animation, some is family, things like that. There is a shortcut. There's a shortcut called across. And what across does is it says, hey, run this function sum, okay? Run the function sum across these columns, okay? And so here I'm going to say from the is comedy through the column is document. Okay, so I'm going to say is comedy colon is document basically means across all the columns from is comedy all the way through is document, run this function of sum. Okay, and I have that inside summarize. So we're going to do title summarize across all of these columns, sum all of these things up. Am I going too fast or is this okay? We're going okay? All right. Let me give you your first view quiz answer for today, week 6, Friday. The first view quiz answer is the letter, let me just double check and make sure I'm doing this right, is the letter B. B is your first view quiz answer for week 6, Friday. Week 6, Friday. Okay, so what will I see when I do titles summarize across is comedy through is document? What should I see? So here I got, when I did it just for comedy count, drama count, this is what I got. I got a Tibble 1/2. What would we expect the result of this operation to be? How many rows, how many columns will I get when I say summarize across is comedy is document and run the operation sum? Yeah, 10 columns and no, 10 columns and 1 row, okay? So we're gonna basically see kind of what we have here, comedy count, drama count, but for all of the different genres, okay? Now, it doesn't change the titles of the columns, so it leaves them as is comedy, is drama, is animation, but it tells us the sum of the values in the is comedy column, the sum of the values in the is drama column, the sum of the values in the is animation, okay? And we get 2325, 2968, 705, 682. So this is a good sign that when I did it my way using, or summarize using sum, I'm getting the same values, which is what I was expecting. So sometimes you want to do this, okay? Here's a question. If I change the word sum to mean, what am I going to get? What does it mean to take the mean of this column? We've got a column of true and false values. Trues get treated as 1s, false gets treated as 0s.
I would say it would be the number there over the total number of observations, right?
Yeah, so how many observations total do we have? 5,850. And basically it's going to be this number divided by 5,850. That's what we do when we do the mean, right? We sum up the thing and we divide by how many we have. And so what we're going to get, if I run this, is, whoops, what did I do? I clicked something. Oh, shoot. I hit Shift Enter. Okay. All right, my bad. Okay, so let me do the sum first. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to do mean. You know what? My space is just a touch too slim. Okay, so here it is for sum, and here it is for mean. Okay, so we can see if I do 2325 divided by 5,850, I get 0.3974359. Okay, and it rounds off to, you know, like 0.397. So this is basically the proportion of titles in the Netflix catalog that are classified as comedies. So in the Netflix catalog of the 5,850 titles, around 40% of them are are listed as comedies. Okay, now they could be comedies and dramas, comedies, romance, comedies, whatever, animation or whatever, but somewhere in their listing there's a comedy. Okay, about half of the titles in the catalog are dramas. Okay, around 12%, 1 in 8 are animation. Around 11%, 12%, I guess, around 12% are family films. Around a fifth, 20% are action. Only around 6% are horror, 10% sci-fi, 16% crime, 4% history, 16% documentaries, things like that. Okay, so that's how you can do mean versus just sum. Sum will give you a count if it's true-false values, and a mean, if it's true-false values, will give you a proportion. All right, so both of those things could be interesting for us. Okay, what I can do here is, so this is the entire catalog, and I can say, well, you know what? What about movies? What about shows? So in the in our thing, we have the type. Type is either a show or a movie, and so I can take the exact same code, and prior to running the summarize function, I'm going to do a group by. I'm going to say group by type, and then tell me how many movies, tell me how many shows that we have. Okay, I'm having to, so I'm going to group by type. All right, and so this is how many comedy movies we have. This is how many comedy shows we have. Drama movies, drama shows, animation movies, animation shows. Okay, so I could do that, and then I can also calculate the mean as well. All right, and so what we don't have is, maybe I should just I'm going to add a line, n equals n, because I want to see how many movies we have total and how many shows we have total. So I think that could be useful. So what I'm going to do, let me just run this. So I'm going to summarize across and do the sum, and addition, I'm going to add one more column for n equals n. So we'll do, first I'll do the sum. Okay, so we have a total of the 5,850 observations, 3,744 are movies, 2,106 are shows, and then I'm going to change from sum to mean, and we could see, okay, of the 3,744 movies, around 42%, right? So if I do 1571 divided by 3744, around 42% are comedy, and then 1876 out of 3744, yeah, around half of them, around 50% are drama. Okay, and I can go through and see these differences. Okay, so there's a few things that stand out, right? So for dramas, around half of movies are dramas, half of shows are dramas. Okay, when it comes to, say, animation, though, there's a huge difference between what proportion of movies are animation versus what proportion of shows are animation. Okay, so movies, only around 7.5% are animation, and around 20% of shows are animation. Okay, and I don't know the reasoning for that, but producing a animated movie is probably a lot more expensive than producing an animated show. You think of kind of cartoon shows and stuff, and you kind of have like kids in mind and stuff, and like the production doesn't have to be as good. And I think the standards for a movie may be a little bit higher. But other things are pretty interesting, right? Like documentary, it's like the exact same proportion for movies and shows. Some of these things, you have a lot more kind of sci-fi movies than, sci-fi shows than sci-fi movies and things. And I don't know. So actually, for shows, the proportion of a lot of these things are kind of higher for most things, with the exception of comedy. There's more comedy movies than comedy shows. Anyway, interesting stuff. What does this all mean? I don't know, but that's what we have there. Okay. Here, I thought, let's look at of all the titles that are comedies. I wanted to look at kind of genre combinations. So here I want to kind of filter, right? Because if we look at some of these things, I'm gonna filter, and I'm gonna say let's look at all the things that are comedies. Okay, so everything here is now a comedy, and some of these comedies, we have comedy action. Okay, right? Action comedies, that would be Monty Python and the Holy Grail, I guess, is considered an action comedy. Here, let me let's just look at something a little bit more. What's something that we might? Okay, Kung Fu Panda, The Dragon Knight. Okay, so we'll look at that. So that's this one. Okay, comedy. It's a comedy, animation, comedy, family, action. So Kung Fu Panda, it's a TV show, I guess. And it counts as comedy, counts as animation, counts as family, counts as an action show, right? So I was just curious, like, are there more comedy, like comedy romance or comedy action, comedy dramas, comedy kind of combinations here? So here I'm going to filter to comedy movies or comedy movies and shows. And then I'm still going to, now that I filtered down to that, I want to add how many total do we have. Okay. So I'm going to just run this. Okay. And so 2,325. So obviously all of the comedies will all be comedies. Okay. So we get a sum there. Okay. And out of those things, 958 are dramas, 388 are animation, 443 is family. And again, for any of these things, I could also change to mean. And for any of these things, I can also do a group by type. And we can kind of see, what are the differences that we get, okay? So, as we run these things, I'm going to just revert back to what I had. And, there's some interesting things, again, to point out, okay? So if we're looking at comedy movies, okay, there aren't very many comedy movies that are also historical, okay? There are, a decent number of comedy movies that are also considered dramas, okay? There are a lot more comedy shows that are considered dramas. And then again, for animation, not very many movies, but a lot more animated shows, a lot of kind of family, this and that, and stuff like that, okay? I can do something similar with is drama. But what I wanted to do, okay, so again, I kind of want to create like a big table of these things. So here's what I originally have, right? So I did summarize, sum up all of these things. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot, okay? I'm going to pivot this longer, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to pivot all of these columns, okay? And we're going to pivot all of the columns. Oh, and you can say, I can just do all of the columns and I can write them all, but I can say all of the columns that start with is. Okay, all of these columns start with is, and we can say pivot all of the columns that start with is. And if we do that, now it just kind of pivots this thing into, I don't know, what do you call it? Into one column, right? Or I guess two columns, the name and the value here. And so I'm going to do the same thing there for the comedies. I'm going to do the same thing with the dramas, okay? And again, for the dramas, we get, 2,968 dramas, and we have these different animation and crime things. And so, we see, comedy crime, not a ton. Comedy drama crime, there's quite a bit, right? We can do like for animation, okay? And we see something like that, all right? So here, I'm gonna do all of these things. I'm gonna do comedy counts, drama counts, animation counts, family counts. I'm gonna just basically, I'm gonna take each of these tables and store them all. So here are comedy counts, comedy subcounts, drama subcounts, okay, so on and so forth. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a left join. Okay, so I'm going to do comedy subcounts, left join, or I guess it doesn't matter, inner join, just some kind of join. Some kind of join with the drama subcounts, okay? Oh, and we're going to do by name, okay? And then so we're going to get, basically I'm just combining, using the name column, we're going to take the value and add them, put them kind of side by side. So I got, is comedy, you know, is comedy and drama 958, is animation and comedy, is animation and drama, kind of like this, right? So we're getting a lot of these things kind of combined. And so, so I have this big kind of join. So I'm joining them table by table, right? So I'm going to join comedy along with drama, and I'm going to add a suffix there. And so I get values underscore comedy, values underscore drama. I can now join that with the animation subcount. So I have value comedy, value drama, and then these are the animation ones. And then I'm going to join that with the family subcount, right? And so, you know, so far I've only done 4, but now I have, you know, all of these values here. Okay, so these are all the counts. Perhaps we would be better suited if we switch to proportions. I don't know, and we can say. So if I wanted to do that, I could just. So instead of counts. Right, I could do comedy sub proportion. And then instead of sum, I'm going to use the mean for each of these things. And I can do all of these operations. So when you do the counts, they are symmetric. So the number of drama comedies is the same as the number of comedy dramas. If I do the proportions, okay, it's a little bit different, okay? So these are the number of comedies that are also comedies, the number of comedies that are also dramas, okay? I have to think, what is it? Sorry, okay. These are going vertically. These are the number of comedies that are also dramas, but of the dramas that are also comedies, there's only, so 41% of comedies are also dramas, okay? But only 32% of dramas get listed as comedies, if that makes sense, okay? For animation, animated shows or movies, half of them are family, versus like for dramas, only 8% of them are family. So we see like, you know, we start to see some of these genre differences, which makes sense, right? Like if you're thinking about a drama, how many dramas are designed to be family dramas? Like designed for the family audience, probably not as many, right? Okay, how many animated things are designed to be for family? A lot more. Okay, again, you know, animated history, not very many. A lot of family shows are comedies. A lot of there aren't too many family shows to begin with. So, of the family shows, there is a decent number of dramas. But of all the drama films made, there's a ton of drama films and shows being made. Only a small portion are family. Okay, but of all the family shows and movies that are made, a lot are comedies. There's a decent number that are also dramas and things like that. Okay. So, and of the family shows that are made, how many are horror ones? Not so many. Okay. So some interesting kind of findings and things, kind of looking at the different genres. And I know this was specific to this Netflix data set, but hopefully some of the ideas of, taking summary values, across multiple columns, calculating, true and false creating columns using, say, string detect, okay, for, detecting a certain string phrase in your data, can reveal something interesting there, okay? And maybe my hope is that it's going to be applicable to multiple groups, not just this one group where we did this demonstration, but to multiple groups. You can kind of adapt some of the concepts and ideas here and use it for your specific data set and do some of the exploration there. Okay, I got to give you your last two view quiz answers, which are going to be the letters E and D. E as in elephant, D as in dog will be your last two view quiz answers for today. We'll go ahead and wrap it up there. And then again, if you are working on something for your project, you got some ideas, you're having a little bit of trouble executing, come to office hours. I got lots of office hours. I'm happy to help you guys out. All right. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.